Hi, all you cool cats and kittens. So today we're going to talk about converting from point slope to slope-intercept form. And so yesterday we talked about writing our equations in point slope form, and now we're just going to write them in point slope form and then convert them over to slope-intercept form. Okay, so here we're given 2 points, and so right off the bat, I know that I need to find my slope. So I'm going to write my slope formula over here. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I also know that I'm going to need my point slope formula, so I'm going to write that as well. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I know that I need them in the final form. I'm going to write point slope above this, so we know. And I know I need them in the final form of slope-intercept form. So I'm going to write my slope-intercept form as well. So that, again, is y equals mx plus b. Okay. So I've written down all my equations that I need. And so now first I'm going to find my slope. So y2 minus y1. So my second y value, 2, minus my first y value, which is 3, over my second x value, which is 3, minus my first x value, which is 2. And then I'm going to simplify. 2 minus 3 is going to give me negative 1. And 3 minus 2 is going to give me positive 1. Okay, now I know that any fraction or any number over 1 is just going to be the numerator. So this is just negative 1. Okay, now I'm going to choose a point and have that as my x1 and my y1. Okay, so I'm just going to use this first point. And you can use either point. It really doesn't matter which point you use. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this first one. So I'm going to write y minus 3 equals negative 1 times x minus 2. And remember, this is my x1 and this is my y1. So I'm just using that first point. And so now, just like we did yesterday, we're going to distribute this negative 1 in. So I'm going to keep this the same. And I'm going to write negative 1 times x is going to give me negative x. And then negative 1 times negative 2 is going to give me positive 2. So yesterday, this is where we left it. So this is still in point slope form, but the directions tell me that I want this in slope-intercept form. So I need to rearrange it to where I have it in the form y equals mx plus b. So I need y all by itself. And so to get y all by itself, I'm going to draw a line here. And currently y is being subtracted by 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That's going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with y equals negative x plus 5. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to go ahead and graph. I know that my y-intercept is 5 and my slope is negative 1. So I'm going to go on my graph here, and I'm going to go to y equals 5. So my y-intercept is 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the y-axis. And then my slope is negative 1. So whenever I have a slope that's negative, I know that it should look something like this. I should be going this way instead of having a positive slope going this way. So my slope is negative 1, so I'm going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And then if I wanted to go the other way, I would just go up 1 and over to the left to put my points the other way. And so now I'm just going to use a piece of paper because I didn't bring home a ruler. And so I'm going to connect all of these points. Most of the time I would use my phone. So that's something that you can use as well instead of a ruler. All right, so that is our final graph. Okay, let's go ahead and do this next one together, and then you can try the third one on your own. So first, again, we're going to find that slope. So I'm going to write m equals, and I'm following my formula up here, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my second y value is 1. So 1 minus my first y value, which is negative 2, over my x2, which is 2, minus my first x value, which is 3. Okay, now I'm going to simplify that. I know if I'm subtracting a negative, I'm like just adding. So 1 plus 2 gives me 3 over 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And so I know that 3 divided by negative 1 is just going to give me negative 3. So I have a negative slope here again. So I should have something that looks like this instead of something that's going to look like this. So I have a negative slope. So here I should also have a negative slope. But let's plug this into our formula so we can find our y-intercept. So I'm going to plug this into my point slope formula. So I'm using this formula. I'm going to cover that one up. And I'm going to write y minus, I'm going to use this point because it gives me 2 positive values. You could use that second point, but just be very, very careful about your negative. So I'm going to use the second point because it's going to give me positive values. So y minus y1, so my y value in my point, so 1 equals m, which is negative 3, times x minus my x value, which is 2. Okay. Now that I have this, I'm just going to simplify this a little bit further, just like we did yesterday. And I'm going to distribute this negative 3 to each term inside the parentheses. So I'm going to write this down just like it is because I'm not changing it. And then negative 3 times x is going to give me negative 3x. And then negative 3 times negative 2 gives me positive 6. Okay, so yesterday this is where we would have stopped. But in order to graph this nicely, we want this in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So we're going to do that next. And so to put this in slope-intercept form, we just want to get y all by itself. And to do that, currently y is being subtracted by 1. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. That's going to cancel. And I'm left with y equals negative 3x plus 7. Okay, now I have my b value, which is my y-intercept, and I have my slope. So along my y-axis, I'm going to go up to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now I have a negative slope of negative 3. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1. Down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1. And so again, if you're a little bit confused about why I'm going down 3 over 1, so my slope, my m, is negative 3 over 1. My negative 3 is my rise, and my 1 is my run. So my rise is which way, or how many units I'm going along the y-axis, and my run is how many units I'm going along the x. So negative 3, my rise, I'm going down 3 along the y. And then my run, I'm just going over 1 along the x-axis. So I'm going to write y and x. So since I have more than 1 point, I'm just going to go ahead and connect those values. Again, I'm using a piece of paper because I don't have a ruler with me. But you can use any sort of thing. If you're fine with a squiggly graph, you can just do your best to connect them. That is fine. And then when you're drawing your graphs, I would suggest trying to make your line go past the graph. So then that way it's very clear where your line is along that graph. Okay, let's do this last one. I'm going to let you go ahead and pause the video here to find your slope. So do that and then let me know what you get. So hopefully you paused the video and you got your slope, which should be 1/2. And And now we're going to plug that into our slope-intercept, or sorry, our point-slope form. So this form up here, point-slope. So I'm going to choose a point. So I'm just going to use this first one. And I'm going to write y minus 1 equals 1/2 times x minus 2. So I'm just plugging into that formula. Okay, now I'm going to distribute this 1/2 in, and you will get y minus 1 equals 1/2 x. And then whenever I'm multiplying any number by 1/2, it's like I'm dividing by 2. So I know -2 divided by 2 is going to give me -1. Okay. And so now we're in point slope form, and now we're going to write this in slope intercept form. So we have y minus 1 equals 1/2 x minus 1, and so I'm going to add this 1 over, and those will cancel, and I'll be left with y equals 1/2 x plus 0. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and graph this. My y-intercept is 0, and so I'm going to go to 0 along the y-axis. And now my rise is 1, so I'm going to go up 1, and then my run is 2, so over 2. Up 1, over 2. Now I'm going to connect those to finish out my graph. And now we are finished. So be very careful on the homeworks. It will say to write them in slope-intercept form. And so remember which form is which. So we have our point slope, which is this. So this can help us get to slope-intercept form. But if on Big Ideas it says it wants it in slope-intercept form, make sure it is in this form because it won't accept anything in this form.